hold 6 grams of gold in your hand, someone had to crush an entire ton of solid rock. 1 ton, reduced to rubble, dissolved, cooked, melted, all so you could hold something smaller than a coin. Ask yourself why. Why does an entire civilization still bend itself around a metal this scarce? Why do we send aircraft into the sky, detonate mountains, and boil rock at furnace heat, all to chase something you could lose in the folds of your pocket? Stay with me to the end, because this isn't just the story of a metal. It's the story of why people have murdered for it, why kings buried themselves beneath mountains of it, why sailors crossed oceans they didn't understand just to touch it, and why, after 10,000 years of trying, we still haven't found an easier way to tear it from the earth. So let's go back. Not to the gold rush, not to the pyramids, further than that. Back to the birth of the planet itself. Here's something that should stop you cold. Most of the gold beneath your feet right now was never born on Earth at all. It fell from the sky billions of years ago, while our planet was still a churning, molten sphere with no crust to speak of. Meteorites bombarded it relentlessly, and buried inside that cosmic wreckage was gold, older than the sun that now warms your skin. Any gold that had existed in Earth's original core had already sunk far beyond our reach, swallowed into a molten heart we will never touch. Everything we mine today is essentially stardust, leftover debris from a sky that once rained metal. Over the following eons, heat from deep within the earth force that buried gold slowly upward, carried inside scalding, mineral-rich fluid that pushed through cracks in the crust the way blood forces its way through narrowing veins. As that fluid cooled and slowed, the gold came to rest, crystallizing inside seams of quartz, sealed into stone, waiting long before anything resembling a human eye existed to look for it. That is the gold we still chase today, and we have chased it for a very long time. The ancient Egyptians didn't see gold as merely valuable. They saw it as divine, calling it the flesh of the gods, and they buried their pharaohs beneath staggering quantities of it, certain they would need it in the next life. 3,000 years ago, Egyptian miners were already sending slaves and prisoners into the deserts of Nubia to hack gold from solid rock by torchlight, in tunnels so cramped that men worked lying down. The Inca, an ocean and a continent away, called it the sweat of the sun, and shaped it into objects meant purely for the eyes of their gods, never to be spent, never to be hoarded, only offered. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, that reverence meant nothing to them. Within decades, they had melted down centuries of sacred Incan and Aztec artistry into anonymous bars, and entire empires collapsed in the resulting hunger for it. Now fast forward to a cold January morning in 1848. At a sawmill on the American River in California, a carpenter named James Marshall noticed something glinting in the tail race, flakes no bigger than breadcrumbs. Within a year, word had spread across the globe, and roughly 300,000 people abandoned their farms, their shops, their entire former lives, and surged towards California with nothing but a pan, a shovel, and a fever nobody could talk them out of. Most of them found next to nothing. What none of them understood, what nobody could have understood with the tools of the 1800s, was that the true fortune wasn't glittering in the shallow gravel of a riverbed at all. It was buried far beneath their boots, locked inside deposits larger than anything their imaginations could stretch to hold, deposits that wouldn't be touched for another 100 years, because the technology to reach them simply didn't exist yet. And that's the problem miners still face today, just at a far greater scale. Modern gold doesn't glitter. It doesn't wink up at you from a riverbed. It exists as something almost cruelly small, microscopic flecks locked inside solid rock, utterly invisible to the naked eye. You could hold a fist-sized chunk of ore, turn it over in the light 100 times, run your thumb across every ridge of it, and walk away convinced it was worthless. It might be holding a fortune. So how do you find something you cannot see? You take to the sky. In the high desert of northeastern Nevada, home to the single largest gold deposit ever discovered in the United States, mining companies now send specially equipped aircraft skimming just a few hundred meters above the sagebrush, low enough that a person on the ground could almost make out the pilot's face. These planes carry electromagnetic survey systems capable of reading the bones of the Earth from the air, detecting the subtle geological signatures that tend to accompany buried gold. It is staggeringly expensive. It can take months of flying the same grid lines back and forth over featureless desert. And even armed with every advantage modern science can offer, most of these surveys still turn up nothing at all. But when they succeed, the reward can be almost unimaginable. One of the companies that has struck gold here is Barrick, one of the largest mining corporations on Earth. Long before a single truck rolls, long before a single ounce of rock is blasted, engineers sink core drilling rigs down as far as 2 kilometers, hauling up long, pale cylinders of stone and studying them inch by inch, layer by layer, like archaeologists reading the pages of a very old, very heavy book. But it lets them draw a 3-dimensional map of ore that no human eye will ever see directly, a blueprint of treasure sealed inside solid rock. Only then does the real violence begin. Every single day, crews drill hundreds of holes into gold-bearing limestone and pack them with a volatile mixture of ammonium nitrate and fuel oil, sometimes as much as 700 to 900 tons of explosive charge for a single blast. Sirens wail. Workers clear for miles. And then, in one thunderous instant, the ground itself seems to leap. Nearly 600,000 tons of solid rock is torn apart in seconds, sent tumbling into rubble that will take machines the size of buildings to move. And after all of it, the drilling, the mapping, the explosives, the noise that can be felt in your chest from a mile away, every single ton of that shattered rock contains, on average, just 3 grams of gold. Read that again. 3 grams, buried inside 2,000 pounds of stone. This is where the machines stop feeling like machines and start feeling like myth. A hydraulic mining shovel, costing upward of $20 million, more than most people will earn across several lifetimes, scoops up broken rock as though it weighs nothing at all, and empties it into haul trucks the size of a 2-story house. Each truck can carry up to 270 tons in a single trip, its tires alone standing taller than a grown man. The stone is crushed down to gravel, then fed into an enormous rotating drum, longer than a city bus, packed with thousands of steel spheres that tumble and grind the rock into powder as fine as flour, finally exposing the microscopic gold hidden inside every fragment. Mixed with water into a thick gray slurry, it's pumped into towering tanks where a carefully measured cyanide solution performs something that still borders on alchemy. It dissolves gold directly out of solid stone, drawing invisible metal into liquid form. A current is passed through the solution, and the dissolved gold is coaxed back out, clinging to a negatively charged electrode called a cathode. Metal, solid, gleaming metal, conjured out of a liquid using nothing but current and patience. But even This remarkable process cannot reach all of it. Beneath Nevada lies an entirely different world, one that has nothing in common with the sunlit chaos above. Miners descend nearly half a kilometer underground, riding cheese and trucks into more than 80 kilometers of tunnels carved through raw stone, where the temperature can climb past 60 degrees Celsius. It is so punishing down there that the mine operates one of the largest industrial climate control systems on the entire planet. The process below ground begins the same way it does above. Blast holes, controlled detonations, colossal loaders scooping up shattered stone, trucks hauling it back toward daylight. But underground ore hides a far more stubborn secret. Down here, much of the gold is chemically imprisoned inside sulfide minerals, and no amount of crushing, however violent, will ever set it free. So engineers resort to something that borders on brute force chemistry. The crushed ore is cooked at 224 degrees Celsius inside a sealed, high-pressure vessel, then blasted with a stream of pure oxygen. Under that punishing combination of heat and pressure, the tough sulfide shell finally fractures and gives way, releasing gold that has sat chemically sealed for millions upon millions of years from both the open pit above and the tunnels far beneath it. Every gram of recovered gold converges on one final destination before it can even be called a bar: the smelting furnace. Heated past 100 degrees Celsius, hotter than the lava flowing from most of the world's active volcanoes. The metal turns fully liquid, glowing an almost blinding orange-white, and is carefully poured into molds where it cools into bars, roughly 90% pure. And here's the number that puts the entire staggering operation into perspective. A single 25-kilogram bar of gold, something you could lift comfortably with 2 hands, represents the processing of more than 8,200 tons of rock. Read that again slowly if you need to. 8,200 tons of stone, blasted, hauled, crushed, dissolved, cooked, and melted, condensed down into one bar you could carry out of a room yourself. Even then, the bar's journey is not finished. It travels to a specialized refinery, where it is melted again, purified further, polished until it holds a mirror's shine, and finally stamped with an official mark certifying its exact purity, mark that will follow it for the rest of its existence. Whether it ends its days locked inside a vault, hammered into a wedding ring, or soldered onto a circuit board, no one will ever see. And gold does end up in far more places than vaults. It's inside the phone in your pocket right now, plated onto microscopic connectors, because gold alone among common metals refuses to corrode, orbits the Earth on the surface of satellites, reflecting away solar radiation that would otherwise cook their electronics alive. Dentists have pressed it into human mouths for over 2,000 years. Astronauts' helmet visors are coated in a layer of gold so thin it's measured in millionths of a meter, thin enough to see through, yet still capable of blocking radiation that could blind the human eye. But the overwhelming majority of all newly mined gold ends up somewhere far less imaginative, locked away, doing absolutely nothing, existing purely as stored value, a promise made of metal. A vast share of it is delivered to one of the most secretive, most heavily fortified buildings on the entire planet, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, buried 5 stories beneath the streets of Manhattan, resting directly atop the bedrock of the island, the same ancient Manhattan schist that lets the skyscrapers above stand so impossibly tall. This vault has guarded the world's gold since the 1920s, through a Great Depression, a World War, and a Cold War without ever once being breached. Armored trucks roll in under armed escort, And inside, gold bars are stacked inside individual cage compartments, each one assigned to a specific nation, forming a vault that currently holds more than $380 billion in metal. $380 billion. And that's only one vault. Across the entirety of human history, we have pulled more than 90,000 metric tons of gold from the earth. Melt every single gram of it, every ring, every coin, every gold tooth, every bar in every vault on the planet into a single cube, and that cube would be modest enough to fit comfortably inside one large apartment building. That is the sum total of 10,000 years of human obsession, small enough to walk around in an afternoon. From a meteorite crashing into a molten, newborn planet billions of years before the first human eye opened, to a truck rumbling beneath the streets of Manhattan tonight. The entire story of gold is written in geology, fire, chemistry, empire, and hunger that has never once gone quiet. And now you know exactly what it costs. The aircraft, the explosives, the $20 million machines. The tunnels hotter than a desert at noon. The fire hotter than a volcano's throat. Just to place 6 grams